Hi everybody, Professor Benelou here with the second short video regarding the Unity Discussion Board. I will be going over the first three topics that you can choose from for this incredibly important assignment. The first topic I want to delve into is the Bay of Pigs invasion. Basically, to give you a little background information, in 1959, the Cuban Revolution brought to power the communist government of Fidel Castro, which of course the United States government was not happy about. The plans for Bay of Pigs invasion had actually been hatched by the Eisenhower administration, but they were formulated too late for Eisenhower to put them into place. It was the Eisenhower administration, along with the CIA, that formulated the plan for the Bay of Pigs invasion. The CIA was secretly training Cuban exiles in Guatemala when President Kennedy became president on January 20th, 1961. And what's interesting is, outgoing presidents leave a letter on the desk in the Oval Office for the incoming president. And apparently in Kennedy's, Eisenhower discussed the plans of the Bay of Pigs invasions. The exiles were to land at a portion of Cuba called the Bay of Pigs. It was hoped that once the invasion occurred, that Cubans would help the exiles in rising up and ousting Castro from power. That did not happen. That most definitely did not happen. April 1961, the Bay of Pigs invasion occurred. The government was to aid the exiles with 2 airstrikes. The problem was, after the first airstrike, the involvement of the U.S. government was obviously revealed and was very obvious. So Kennedy canceled the second airstrike, upsetting many Cubans. About 1,200 exiles were taken prisoner and 100 were killed during the Bay of Pigs invasion. President Kennedy ended up negotiating the release of the imprisoned exiles. And the primary document that you will be analyzing if you choose the Bay of Pigs is a letter written by Richard N. Goodwin, who was an advisor to President Kennedy. It's his letter to President Kennedy regarding the Bay of Pigs. Okay, secondly, a year and a half later, we had another situation with Cuba called the Cuban Missile Crisis. October 1962, U.S. military surveillance planes photographed missile sites being constructed by the Soviets within Cuba. Kennedy administration had 2 main options in responding to this. Number one, they could have ordered an invasion of Cuba, or secondly, place a naval blockade against Cuba. Kennedy chose the naval blockade against Cuba. Why? Okay, that's what you need to answer. And by the way, the primary document you are using this time is actually a YouTube video of President Kennedy addressing the nation regarding the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Kennedy administration chose to place the naval blockade against Cuba because it feared that an invasion would lead to intervention by the Soviet Union. And of course, still had a bitter taste in the mouth regarding the possibility of an invasion because of the the Bay of Pigs fiasco. Negotiations during the Cuban Missile Crisis lasted a tense 13 days, and it was the closest the U.S. had ever been to nuclear war. Extremely tense time. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy wrote of his experience as a cabinet member during the crisis within his famous book, 13 Days. It also was turned into a movie. The Soviets removed the missiles from Cuba in exchange for the U.S. promise not to invade Cuba. But what was not revealed to the American public until fairly recently was the fact that the U.S. had agreed to remove its missiles from Turkey and Greece as part of the negotiations that ended the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, the second topic you may delve into is Vietnam War protest. The primary document you will be analyzing with this one is a speech by John Kerry regarding his service in Vietnam and why the U.S. should not be involved in Vietnam. John Kerry served as a U.S. Senator from Massachusetts from 1985 until 2013. Kerry was the Democratic Party nominee in 2004 for the presidential election, and he served as Secretary of State under President Obama from 2013 to 2017. From 1966 until 1970, he served as lieutenant in the U.S. Navy fighting in Vietnam, and he gave this speech in front of Congress April 23rd, 1971. He was very disillusioned after coming home from serving in Vietnam, and he joined the group called Vietnam Veterans Against the War. This group was formed in 1967 and consisted of those that had served in Vietnam that were now opposed to the war. Carey was chosen to give a speech before Congress on behalf of this organization April 23rd, 1971. Okay, the third topic and the last one that I will go over in this short video is that of the women's rights movement or the feminist movement. This is the background of the National Organization of Women, because the document that you will be analyzing was created in 1966, and it's the founding document for the National Organization of Women, which is a group that is still around today. The founding of NOW was inspired by the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to fight for equality for women. Founding members include Dr. Pauli Murray and Betty Friedan. Murray was a Yale law professor who was a member of the President's Committee on the Status of Women. Friedan was very famous for the publication of her 1963 book, The Feminine Mystique. She surveyed women who had graduated from her alma mater, Smith College. And by interviewing these women, she found that, the happy housewife was a myth, that a lot of these women were looking for something more. They were yearning for a career, etc. So she turned her findings into the book, The Feminine Mystique. It's interesting because I feel every woman should read The Feminine Mystique. It's a great book. And I'm a very active person. And I remember I checked out The Feminine Mystique from the library when I was in between semesters during semester break. And, I relax every night by reading for like a half hour before I go to bed. And I'm reading The Feminine Mystique, and I went, and my husband went, what? And I said, you're never going to believe this. This really hit home with me. She had a theory in The Feminine Mystique that stay-at-home wives and moms take longer with their household chores than women who work outside the home. And I just said to my husband, oh my gosh, I have been taking more time with my housework since I've been on break. But anyway, very fascinating book. The one main flaw with her book is that it was geared towards white middle-class women. Okay, Chicano rights movement. Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers you need to know about before delving into this. Basically, this is an interview with Chavez, the document that you will be analyzing. Chavez was born in Yuma, Arizona in 1927. He learned about injustice at a young age. His father was swindled out of land by unscrupulous white people. Chavez's family eventually moved to California, where he was banned from speaking Spanish in school and experienced a lot of prejudice for being a Latino. After completing 8th grade, Cesar Chavez became a migrant farm worker to support his family. 1962, Chavez, along with Dolores Huerta, formed the United Farm Workers. This organization is still around today, and its purpose is to fight for the rights of migrant workers. And they went on strike to protest treatment by California table grape growers and lettuce growers. 1968, Chavez famously went on a 25-day hunger strike. And during that strike, he was visited by Senator Robert F. Kennedy in a show of support. In fact, there's a very famous picture of Kennedy sitting with Chavez during his hunger strike. And it's funny because many years later, Chavez engaged in another hunger strike, and Kennedy's widow, Ethel Kennedy, visited him in support during that time. So very interesting. Okay. The next video that I'm going to do will be going over the other 3 topics. So I will see you in a bit for that.